Welcome to my channel, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Shweta. I'm the founder of Healthy Dynamics. We are a coaching practice that helps healthcare professionals from non-English speaking backgrounds become better communicators in order to build influence, authority, trust, and credibility with their patients. So as part of my monthly interview series, and this actually is going to be the last video of 2024, I invited two of my dear friends who are not only child-free by choice like me, but also are healthcare professionals. So we're going to have a nice chat, relaxed, fun, chill chat about our journeys as healthcare professionals and just get an insight into their worlds. So we will start with Justyna. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh my goodness, where do I start? Well, look, I've got a background in nursing, and I was thinking about it the other day. It's been quite a significant time. I did my graduate year in 2007, had a pause in healthcare sort of in between, and I'm one of those people in nursing that I don't particularly have a specialization, but I've probably worked in just about every single area. So, you know, what's the saying? Jack of all trades, master of none, which is often seen as a negative thing. But I guess it means that I'm pretty, for example, during COVID, I was very adaptable to doing a lot of things, you know. So I will get to that specialization at some point, but currently my role is as a clinical nurse educator. And I do a particular type of specific program of training where I work, so to do with occupational violence and aggression. So that's a mouthful. So often we just say OVA. So I train pretty much anyone from security to doctors and everyone in between within the organization. So that's probably my nursing career in a nutshell, which is, it's amazing how time goes by. And that's me.
Yeah, a woman of many talents. From not only what I have known you personally in sort of sharing an example of that, but you've also provided evidence of that in your workplace. So I'm very surprised, and it's been great knowing you for the past 3 years now.
It's again, time has gone fast.
Yes, 100%.
You know, I think it gets faster as you get older.
Yes,
but that's the beauty of life.
Yes,
as well,
100%.
So.
Now let's move over to Roos, who's from Netherlands, but she lives in Melbourne, Australia. So introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Roos Kolder. I've been a psychologist since 2007. I've done a lot of things as well, like Justyna said, but I think I did end up specializing in virtuality therapy, specifically for psychotic disorders and anxiety disorders. And I'm also have sort of a research side where I'm a senior research fellow.
Excellent. All right. And how long have you been practicing in Australia? And
that was a challenge in itself, because when I moved to Australia, it was mainly for the research job. But when we decided to stay longer, I ended up getting my clinical registration here in Australia. So I moved to Australia 3 years ago. Lovely lockdown times in Melbourne. And then I think about 2 years almost that I've got my FRA registration as a psychologist here in Australia as well.
Excellent. Yeah. So you're here to stay.
I'm indefinitely here. Yes.
Lovely. And we've loved welcoming you into Australia and making you part of us. So Roos, we'll get started with you now. So what made you choose a career in psychology, and why did you decide to move into research? And do you still plan to continue your clinical work?
Yeah, those are a few questions. I think when I had to make the decision what I was going to study, I was actually indecisive between two choices: becoming an animal veterinarian and a doctor, and a psychologist. And I was 18, and I decided I did not like cutting up kittens, even if it's for their own good. So that's how I ended up in psychology. So it's a bit, when you're 18, you have to make these life-changing decisions. And luckily for me, I ended up with a good choice, a choice that really fits me well. And the other question was, I think, about the research.
Yes. So are you planning on doing more research, or continuing with the clinical work, or doing both?
Both. I love the combination. I love how being a researcher always makes me be aware of the most up-to-date research and interesting developments. And I love how that influences my clinical practice. And the other way around, I think that I'm a better researcher because I actually see people. and I see what they're struggling with, and they inspire me to come up with better treatments and see if that helps.
Awesome. Now, Justyna, the question is over to you. What made you choose a career in nursing and eventually transitioning into an educator in the nursing space?
Oh, I feel like that's how long have you got kind of question.
We intended on keeping this for 25 minutes, so yeah, keep it short.
I think from a younger age, and I say about my mid-teens, I knew I wanted to do, it's very generic, I wanted to do something to help people. I knew that much. And like a lot of teenagers, you kind of get to that point. And I think I had, a healthcare focus, but I was looking at other things as well. And I kind of fell into nursing, and it's really bizarre. I had a sense when I was kind of picking things like, oh, should I be an accountant or this or that? Because being an accountant's very practical, right? But something in me said, you know what, if you do nursing and there's like a world disaster or, something, you'll be able to help people. And, and then COVID comes along. It was a weird sense 20 odd years ago that let's just, who knows?
Yes.
Who knows where life takes you? And I struggled throughout uni. Like I struggled a little bit, but I just felt that persistence to want to keep at it. So, I've worked for quite a few years in different areas, and I was just, again, stumbled in this role. I happened within the organization that I work with, I happened to do this training myself that particular year because everyone had to do it. I did it, and I was looking at the person running it going, oh, this is kind of cool, And then 2 months later, the role was advertised. I didn't think I knew that I didn't quite have the qualifications or exactly everything I should have, but I had other attributes. And literally, I had 2 days to apply. I was telling my dad about it, and he said, just go and apply. So in my frenzy, I did, and that's, it's funny how life takes you.
Life takes you. I was just about to say that. Yeah, it's.
And normally I don't always believe in that. Oh, things happen for a reason. It kind of did, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
And it all worked out for the best for you, which is
exactly. That's right.
Yeah. So it's a good victory in various ways. All right, moving over to you now, Roos. Now, what changes and challenges have you observed in terms of how aware your patients are now about the way in which they practice their rights, their knowledge about therapy and treatment and all that, and how has that impacted your practice and how you how you support your clients?
I think mostly for the best. I think it's been going on for a few decades. I think sort of the patient movement being more big in advocacy and being more aware of things. I like it. It in some ways. It does end up with interesting situations in the clinical room as well, because people sometimes get information from sources that are not always quite. I think there was a research on mental health and psychology information on TikTok, and I think 60% was wrong. So the chances of someone seeing a mental health,
TikTok always is.
Yeah, but seeing the chances of someone having information about mental health on TikTok being wrong more often than they're being right. That's even worse than Google and all these other things. So it ends up with, but I think it's a good thing that people do have access. I do think that it shows interest. They want to learn more. They want to know more. But it is sometimes this sort of an open discussion we're having, like, where's this information coming from, and how is it helping you? I think it's, for me, it's also, as a psychologist, I can give advice, but people are totally free to fully ignore my advice. And a lot of them do, or many do, at least temporary, and that's fine. It's always up to them.
Have you ever had situations where you've been challenged by a client just based on, this is what I have learned, or this is what I've experienced, and you're sort of suggesting something completely different? And how have you navigated through that?
I think the challenge in that is less in therapies and more in diagnostics. So there's a lot of strange information floating around about diagnostics, and a lot of it is also, again, good, because there's now, for example, a lot more knowledge available on how ADHD and autism spectrum disorder emerging women and in young girls and adult men, and that's good. But it's also I've been in a few situations where it's more like, okay, but when we do the official diagnostics, people maybe not getting the diagnosis they were looking for, and maybe they get something else, and they usually go for a second opinion, which is absolutely their right.
Yeah, I think like you sort of mentioned, there's so much misinformation, but actually I see it as a good learning opportunity for yourself as well, if you sort of keep a little bit of an open mind. So yeah, very interesting. Now, Justyna, would you like to add anything to the question, or is there something that would you like me to repeat the question?
I think it's very interesting now. There is a lot of information out there, and if you're a consumer of healthcare, you have to decipher between what's right, what's wrong, can make people very anxious about their health as well. If you're doctor Googling everything, so you kind of, it is important, and you've got to have that balance between what you think and getting that expertise knowledge. In terms of advocacy, I think it's a positive. I work. My team falls under the learning and teaching within mental health, right? So I don't have a mental health background. I haven't worked really in mental health other than in this role. And what we're seeing increasingly over the last few years is a lived experience workforce. So people that have an experience of mental health, contributing either to education or other areas within the healthcare system. And that's, I think, happening across the board. There's been changes in the Mental Health Act.
I've seen the same. Yeah, really good.
So it's super fascinating. And at my office, one of the guys, Chris, he's not far from my desk, and he's amazing. And he's a part of the lived experience workforce. And he is just, amazing in what he does, and amazing in how he shares his knowledge of his personal experience, I
actually, from my experience of working with different healthcare professionals as well as coaches, I find people who are just who have all these accolades, and they're just like textbook warriors. I felt that there was such a bridge between me and them that I really felt that I was not supported by them. Whereas when I could see that, they have, because, the people I worked with, they were much older than me. So even if they didn't experience something firsthand, their children have gone through it. So again, having that firsthand experience and infusing that into their practice just made them add a lot more credibility. So just qualifications and, everything alone is not going to get you through how it used to many years ago. So and the point that Roos mentioned as well, this late diagnosis of ADHD and autism, there is a lot. I know a lot of people who are not only on the spectrum, but like you also work with people who are on the spectrum, and it's a very open for debate thing. Why are so many people getting ADHD nowadays? Why?
There's some research on that.
Yes. But then again, it is typically, women get diagnosed much later than men do. And, why people get autism as well, because it may, even though no one in the family have had it before. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack and a lot to learn. And I think as someone who's spoken a lot in my content about how you should incorporate neurodivergence when you're speaking to patients, it can make room for a lot of development and innovation in the fields for sure. Now, I will now move over to Justyna. So, so you've obviously worked with quite a diverse crowd. So what sort of challenges and lessons what challenges have you experienced and lessons you've learned? So this could be, when I say diverse, it could be not just neurodivergence, but also cultural, linguistic, gender, sexuality, everything.
Look, I'm trying to think back to some of my clinical days, and definitely I think when I worked in palliative care, that's a real that's a really beautiful but difficult area to work in. And I look back now and go, how did you end up there in your sort of early to mid 20s working in that kind of an area? That's pretty full on if you're not kind of got enough life maturity either. But that's a separate thing aside. And that kind of area really highlights having to understand culturally what's important for people at death. So that's has its challenges, particularly around eating and food when someone's dying. That can really present challenges. But I think it's around working as a within the team and understanding what's important for that family. Can we accommodate requests? If we can't, then we have to advocate and go, well, this is actually happening right now, and some things we can do, some things we can't do. So that's kind of immediately where I can think where cultures can not clash, but there can be a difference, and you just have to understand those differences. There's differences around around dying and death, and some of them can be beautiful depending on people's cultures. So I know I'm talking about a topic that maybe is a bit difficult for people to talk about, but it's part of our, it's a part of life too, and a part of healthcare.
Yes.
So that's one area I definitely think immediately where culture can come across. Obviously, we in Melbourne are a very multicultural kind of city, and so there's parts of Melbourne, certain hospitals you go to, and you do definitely see more prominent cultures. So it's again understanding the subtleties of what's important for them. I don't think it's necessarily a clash, but it can be if we don't understand what's value, what they value.
Yes, and taking that into account.
Yeah.
I think when I first moved here, about how many years will it be next year? 23 years ago.
Yeah.
There's such a difference. Like, back in the day,
Yes.
just as a different example. Now, I remember going to, if we wanted Indian groceries, we had to drive all the way from, it used to be like a 45-minute drive just to get to that one Indian store. But now there's an Indian store from walking distance where I am.
Yeah, 100%.
And obviously the diversity as well that you see in workplaces, from
100%.
being a predominantly Anglo-Saxon one 25 years ago to now there's people like me who are in the majority now. So
that's right. Yeah.
And you have the same sort of diversity when you have in patients, and that's why I sort of make it a point that with clients that they are well aware of this and they're equipped on on the knowledge and skills on how to take that on. So thank you for that. Now, Roos, I'm just going to ask you the same question, but with a slightly different touch. So you have obviously worked in Australia as well as in the Netherlands. So not just culturally, but what other forms of diversity have you experienced and explored in both countries, and how much of that has played a part in your practice?
I think I've always worked in big cities in the Netherlands as well. I've always been around multicultural groups and different kind of people. I think in the Netherlands, I work mainly with psychosis, which in its essence is trying to find explanations for things you are experiencing, and that might not necessarily be explainable. So sensory and perceptual delusions and distortions. And we see that culture plays a big part in that. So in the Netherlands, a lot of the people I saw were, for example, with a North African background, where it's very common that explanations involved jinns. If they were hearing voices, if they were getting instructions or seeing things, it might be jinns. And we really adapted. There was even a protocol specifically for helping people in psychosis with jinns and helping manage that experience. And I think that is something that I am sort of relearning here as well, because there are different kind of cultures here in this other side of the world. And also just the Australian culture. There's a lot of overlap, I think, between the Dutch and the Australian culture. We're both quite direct, even though the Dutch are a bit more rude and more direct.
Oh, that's why I love you guys. And I remember today I was telling you that, I'm having a little delay, and you were on the dot at 1:00. So very Dutch thing.
Yes, that is very Dutch. That is true.
Yeah,
that's absolutely true. And that is something I am getting used, sort of have to get used to, sort of the cultural differences, something even like ghosting, that's not a thing. And here you just have professionals or companies or colleagues ghost you, and you have to follow up on things. And I'm always surprised how much I have to follow up on. And with clients as well, it's a bit, in the Netherlands, if they don't want to come, they probably just lie and say they're sick. But then at least I would know they wouldn't come. And here they don't. So more don't show up.
Yeah.
Just lie to me. So I know you're not coming.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. I think I always try to assume I know nothing. And that comes from my psychosis background, because there's, a lot of people saying, oh, maybe this is voodoo, or do you know about that? And I always say, I've heard of the word, but please explain it to me. And that's sort of an attitude I try to have with everybody, anybody. Just, I want to help you as a team. You're the expert of you.
Yes.
You're the expert of your experiences. I have the psychology book knowledge, and let's see if there are ways I can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's no harm in saying that, oh, I don't know this, it's a learning opportunity for you as well. Because a lot of people struggle to say that, especially from the Asian cultures, they really struggle to say, I don't know the answer. Or I don't know.
And I think it's even reassuring, because I'm actually dyslexic. And in the beginning, I often, when I work with people, we're trying to sort of, we call it case formulation. We're trying to figure out what's going on and where I can help them with. And I use the whiteboard quite a lot. So I'll make mistakes. And I also say, I'm sorry, I'm dyslexic. It's also my second language. And people, it sort of often, they don't judge me for it. It more sort of relaxes them. And, they help me with the words. And I think just showing that you're comfortable with your own mistakes or your own things like that also makes it easier for them to be
and obviously it's also easier for patients or clients to relate to you when you're human. I remember
also human.
All of us are. I remember watching a clip of on TikTok of one of my favorite creators on TikTok, Dr. Amir. I've actually spoken to him, and he's going to come and do this interview with me next week. So if you haven't checked him out, please do so on Instagram and TikTok. I'll leave his
I'm not on TikTok.
So but he's a genuine vet. He's amazing. He's qualified. He's got a lot of experience. But anyway, the other day he mentioned that he did a TikTok that what happens when we euthanize animals, and it's very common. And that's one of the many reasons why I decided against veterinary medicine as well, because I was like, I can't do this. It's too hard. So the TikTok basically said that, typically I have to hold back my tears, or show any emotion. We're in the room with the clients and the animal that's passed away. But I will, take that time. When I give them space, I will go outside and I will just bawl my eyes out. And I remember the comments in that video kept saying that, it's absolutely okay to cry with us, because grief is something that brings us closer together. And I think for maybe also because he's a man, that could also be a reason why he, tries to sort of hold it all in. But I think I've never experienced that. I mean, I've experienced one animal pass away, but again, they were the same thing. They gave us space for us to cry and grieve, and I don't know what happened, but I'm sure that I don't know how they do it. The job as a veterinarian, it's not just the euthanasia. Just seeing really, you see some of the worst of humanity in this job, in that job as well. So it's one of the many reasons I could never do it. Anyway, moving on. Now, Justyna, the next question, I'm going to move on to you. So this month, and so most of November and most of December, I've been focusing on boundary setting. It's been predominantly my content on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So what has been your experience with being aware of your boundaries, setting them? What do you do when people, cross over them? And have you had trouble being aware of your boundaries or telling people what they are in the past? Just share us your story a little bit.
That's an interesting, gosh, I'm probably really bad with boundaries. I'll just be like, oh, yeah, I'll do this. I'm one of those people at the moment. It's like, yes to everything. Yes.
Happy to help.
Shoot, I don't have time. Crap. Everything's a mess, but let's go out and do stuff. So I'm in my personal life, I can be quite bad at that. And However, when I think about professional stuff, we do need to kind of, I was training a bunch of security guards yesterday, and in that we talk a little bit, we do some practical stuff, but also I did chat a bit around de-escalation.
Okay.
Because they're often the not forefront, but a part of when things are starting to get quite difficult, patients are becoming distressed and agitated, they're there helping the staff. And some of them are excellent communicators, and they can set those, despite what people think, they've been in the industry for a long time, and they can create this kind of, what I would say is a boundary, that they can chat to people on any kind of level, whether it's, just a patient, and, they can use the really colloquial kind of Aussie language, or they can be a bit more stern and go, no, mate, we've really, no, you, whatever it is that they say, and create that, so it's understanding, number one, out of that is understanding how you physically present in that situation. Because some of the security guards can look pretty intimidating. So number one, you've got to understand how you present, right? Through that, potentially how you present, your body language, your stance, how you're using your tone of volume and voice. And from there, you often need to start off gently first.
Okay.
If you come in with a bunch of escalation and the person's already, up, we're done. It's not going to go well. But at some point, this is the boundary I'm thinking of. At some point, you've got to know when enough is enough and having to be assertive. We don't want to come in with a bunch of assertion straight away.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good example. And I think when I have done videos on conflict management, that's what I have emphasized on. But the reason is, the point of it is that you have to de-escalate the situation.
We want to de-escalate. And if it's getting really serious physically, where there's going to be an issue, then that's when we've got to start to be more assertive, and it can get to that point, but we're trying to avoid that in the first place. People just want to be heard.
Yes.
They just want to vent usually and want to be heard.
100%.
So if we can get to their level, that is creating a better outcome potentially. So
lovely. That's a very good example. And Roos, what are your thoughts on boundaries?
Well, luckily, as in a professional way, I've always had this kind of training. So I think I was always been in my role as a psychologist. I was good at setting boundaries. The problem was outside it for me.
Okay.
I don't come from a safe home as a kid, so there's a lot of things I had to learn, like boundaries. What are my boundaries? How am I allowed to express them? How am I allowed to communicate them? And I did learn that, but it took a while. And I think especially as women in science, there's a lot of demand on us as well. And I was always also saying, happy to help. I think more of my challenges were with setting professional boundaries in the team, towards coworkers, towards bosses. And I'm reading this book and I love it, so I want to recommend it to everybody, The No Club. And it is really about, as a woman, there's a lot of research in it, but also just personal examples, how there is more demand from us. We get asked to do more. We say yes more. And there's also sort of more social penalty if you say no. And how do you navigate that? And the dynamics, there's mostly of the research has been for women, but it seems like, especially for women of color or people of color, these the similar dynamics. This very practical book, aside from being interesting, also how to navigate that and be less affected by that. So I recommend it to everyone.
100%. And I think if you haven't already done so, please mention that as a suggestion for one of, because we have monthly book clubs. That can be a good one that we can definitely look into, especially because our group is all women. So it would be very good. And I remember I also suggested a book very similar. It's by Rose Hackman. It's called Emotional Labor. Because we sort of talked about that in one of our previous, the October book club, where the concept of emotional labor really came in. And I was like, yeah, we should definitely do this book as well, because women are notorious for doing this. And whatever you've mentioned, Rose, I've done all the videos. I've done a video exactly on that, why people have trouble setting boundaries, and everything that you've mentioned is what I've highlighted in that video. So that sort of makes me a little bit reassured.
It's a challenge we have. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
It is hard, isn't it? Because we just want to say yes, yes, yes. And then suddenly we reach a breaking point and we go, no. But sometimes that no comes out really badly because we haven't, we just go really aggro and assertively saying no, and then maybe that's just me.
No, I've done that in the past as well. I've been getting better at it, so I've been saying no a lot more and using my very Dutch directness.
Beautiful.
And it is something to navigate because it doesn't always land well. If the professor wants him to to do stuff for him that's not necessarily modal work or useful for me, then I say no. And then one of the feedbacks I got is that I say no a lot. So it's but also I don't care because I'm sick of doing it. And I think that sort of being sick of it is something that I've become more that I've become older, and it sort of feels like a bit of a superpower as well. I'm just sick of it. I don't care anymore. We
just our tolerance for bullshit, has really reduces the older that you get. 100%, yeah. And it's interesting. It was a couple of weeks ago. Again, I made content about why we hesitate to say no. I made like little reels, and I'm about to make another one now, with more creatively. But yeah, it's about when you set boundaries. Again, the video just before this interview, it looks into when you set that boundary, keep it short, succinct, direct, Dutch style, if you may.
No capacity for that.
But also, don't over-explain yourself.
No.
If you have to give a reason, fine, but don't, because it just loses its importance and value if you do that.
I just say I have no capacity for that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
you're my kind of woman. No, because no is a complete sentence, isn't it?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, this has been really, really fun, ladies. Now, is it okay if I include both your LinkedIn profiles in the video? Okay, so people know where to find you and where to contact you. And we had a really fun and good discussion, and I'm about to board a plane in about 11 hours from now for my 2-week holiday to the Philippines. So, can't wait for it. It's been a long time coming, and I will. We will catch up during the Christmas period, hopefully.
Yeah. So, the Christmas thing already, I think, in our agendas. Yeah.
So there are a lot of events happening, I know. So we will definitely see each other. So for the ones who are watching and listening, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and notification bell, and like the video if you enjoyed this. And thank you very much for all your support, attention, and presence this year. And we will see you in 2025. Thank you very much, and have a good holiday season.